And we'll go ahead and get started. So, Mr. Ridgway, my first question is, where did this come from? Like, how did we know there was a need for this? And where did this all start that we needed to get this ballot measure out there?
Good question, Lauren. Good evening to you and to everyone that is joining. I'm really glad to see a lot of folks jumping into this because what I want is for people to have information to make good informed decisions on their election decisions. And so to circle to your question, that's a really good question. And I probably would share a couple things on screen if I am able to. Yes, here we go. So the real genesis of this situation, is very objectively defined, and it started with observations that came from the staff as we survey our staff every single year to understand what's going on in their world, what is getting better, what's getting worse, what are they feeling as it becomes to their employment with District 49. And so for the last couple of years, we measure this again in the survey results with something called employee key requirements. And in the last couple of years, we've had these two outliers of employee key requirements regarding competitive salary as a function of employee key requirement and how well District 49 is doing in terms of their employment experience with us. Most of the other items you can see here are really tight and centered around a very high performing axis of results. But it is the competitive salary that was an outlier. And so after last year's survey results, I undertook to see if I could find some reasons, find and understand and explore the situation. What I did then was work with my colleagues at District 11 and District 20 to get some information that isn't just readily available, unfortunately. And there are things about financial transparencies, but there's just different depths and levels of information that aren't always easily accessible through that. And so I worked with them, and I appreciated their generosity in working with me in this, so I could understand a hypothesis that I was putting together, that there was a reason, a real revenue reason to the fact that our competitive salary was scoring this way. So it's kind of a cause and effect hypothesis that we put together. Before I would do that, I guess I would want to make sure that folks also understand just how school district revenue works in one particular way, and that is, we have a lot of charter schools in our district, and that's good. They're great partners for us. They provide great options that our community can choose from in terms of our portfolio model of educational choices that we have. And they are a good, big, large part of our school district. So this is revenue numbers in terms of our budget from last year, the 20/21 year. We start with a really big number, almost $275 million worth of revenue that the district was receiving in all categories all across the board. And that gets distributed into the charter school portfolios. $93 million of that is assigned to the charter schools, and then $180 million of that comes into the operated portfolio and the operated programs of the school district. Then there's another concept that I wanted to introduce, is how much of that money has strings attached to it. Very strict rules and requirements for what that money can be spent on, what it's supposed to achieve, et cetera. And that is a good thing, but it also is a very material part of what we do and the revenue that we receive. And so overall, of the $275 million, $98 million of that money has some really strict strings attached to it, which leaves $176 million total. $78 million of that comes to the chartered portfolio, and $97 million of that is available to the operated portfolio. So very quickly there, what we've done is just demonstrate how complex and how large our business is, and how quickly we can get from $275 million total to a $97 million total. And the purpose of this was to say, when it comes to compensation, it is this type of no strings revenue, general fund, AKA general fund revenue, that compensation decisions are made with. And so when we again circle back to that idea of competitive pay, what is the revenue that is available to set compensation with? And how does that compare with our neighbors? Because it is competitive pay. What are we paying as opposed to our neighboring districts that we are competing with, especially for talent and personnel. And so that's where comparing ourselves on a per pupil basis, what is the revenue per pupil? And you can see this number here of $7,593 per student is District 49's number of no strings, AKA general fund revenue. And so I really wanted to then demonstrate that, see how does that compare to our competitors at District 11 and District 20. And so this graph here on the left side of this chart especially is what best provides that indication. And so you can see here in the green column is District 49's data, blue is in the District 20 data, and orange is the District 11 data. And there's the $7,593 that I mentioned of District 49 data that is composed of two pieces. The lighter color of the bar here represents the School Finance Act. The dark color on the top represents what comes to the district by the means of community discretionary support, AKA mill levy overrides, especially as it pertains to operations. The equivalent number for District 20 is $8,657, and for District 11 was $10,421. And this does not include things that are supposed to be different, levels of education for English language learners or levels of education for free and reduced lunch, aka poverty. Those things are supposed to be different. This is all supposed to be apples to apples general fund revenue. And this is where we are seeing large disparities. And this is what is causing the difference that we are seeing in our compensation side. Again, it comes down to the override numbers, and that's what we're here to talk about. Is a tax increase, a potential tax increase. And so I will say that several times because there's no hiding from that the ballot question that is being presented is a tax increase ballot question. And so I want to provide you information as to what is the whys and wherefores of that. What we see in District 49 is $200 of operational override revenue per student. That compares to $1,000 of operational override revenue per student in District 20. And $2,300 of operational override revenue per student in District 11. And so those are the material differences. That's where the difference gets created, is in this additional level of funding. And then what did that translate to? What does this mean on the staffing side? And this is where my partnership and cooperation with our neighbors really helped understand and get to the real issue of this. And that is our staffing efficiency or deficiency comparisons with District 11 and District 20. And this is by employee segment within the district, within each district, each of the three districts. So what we have here is the pink column represents the number of staff positions that we have on a per student basis relative to District 11 and District 20. The purple column represents the amount of compensation that those staff are supported with. Notice that on the left side axis here, the top line is 0, meaning everything on this chart is below 0. Every position, every role is suffering in comparison to our neighboring districts to different degrees, of course, but every role is down. Then what that means in summary then is in the pink bar here for the total district column that we have 17% less staff on a per student basis than our neighboring districts. And the staff that we do have receives 14% less compensation. And to the right side of this dotted line, you can see 4 categories of the employee, the staff in terms of administrators, teachers, professional support, and general support roles. Again, every one of these subcategories are also showing these disparities of lacking efficient or equitable comparison to these district partners, district neighbors of ours. And they're different degrees, of course, and that's just kind of the accumulation of what has happened over time. But again, it's a consistent message that every role is less than our neighboring districts. And that then provides the support for the observation that our staff made at the Voice of the Workforce survey. And so then it came to me to say, what is the solution? What is the potential solution for that? And again, it comes back to that mill levy override revenue. And another graph I can show then quickly to demonstrate the differences between us is this graph here. There's a lot of information on this graph, and so I will be able to zoom in on it and show pieces here. But what we'll see here is green lines and green bars, blue lines, blue bars for D20, orange line and orange bars for D11. Again, and the greens represent the D49. And so what we see is this trend that has existed for many years of a non-competitive level of local community support in D49 compared to these district neighbors again. And it's really staggering how big the difference is. We compete at a high level of efficiency. We embrace that charge from our Board of Education, from our community to be efficient, and we are efficient. But when the disparities become this large, efficiency is not something that can be used to overcome them. And what you see on the far right side of this chart here for this last year in the 2020/21 year, where again, it was $200 per student. That $200 per student for D49 equated to $4.8 million. In total money for D20, it was $26 million. And in total dollars for D11, it was $54 million. So just huge, staggering differences in this particular piece of revenue that is, again, causing these disparities in staffing and compensation. The cost, the average cost for a $300,000 homeowner in District 49 for the money that is happening right now for this $4.7 million, again, we appreciate that, is $95 a year. The District 20 cost is $311 per year, and the District 11 cost is $383 per year. So those are, again, just numbers provided for perspective to say that this is an issue, and there is a reason why that issue is occurring, and that would be the difference in override local support between the three districts. So that is, I think, the major part of the background. And then as I presented this to the Board of Education through the course of the spring on into the summer, their questions then started to center around, well, what would be a good amount to suggest or to request from our community to bring us to a better level of competitive balance. And so that became what the 6.5 mils that is proposed in the ballot language that you'll see on the ballots when they come out, I think later this week. And that is that will not, by the way, get us completely even with these two districts, because we are still embracing the need to be efficient and to be better than what they are in terms of efficiency of spending. But this will go a long way towards changing that, closing that gap, and allowing a real good, honest, even competition. So maybe I'll stop there, Lauren. I don't know if that's enough to set the table with.
I think that's some good background. I want to ask the big question, and that is, how much will my taxes go up if I vote yes on 4A? Okay,
so I'm going to start sharing again, and I'll just go through a quick really raw exercise in a blank spreadsheet here. So again, the way this works is that you have a market value of a property, and the market value is then assessed at a property assessment rate. And I'll make this bigger here. Let's see if it's big enough to still fit on the screen. Okay, assessment rate. Then you have the mill rate, which is the actual tax rate, and then you can end up with the annual tax bill, if you will. So we'll just call it that, what it is. So again, if we start with a $300,000 home, the assessment rate, of course, right now is 0.715%. And I will insert a row here and just do that math real quick. So that means what we have in there is the assessed value of that property. So you multiply those two together, 300,000 times the assessment rate of 7.15%, you get this assessed value at $21,450. Again, the ballot measure is proposing 6.5 mils. To properly quantify that mill rate into the assessment rate, you have to divide that by 1,000. So you take that and divide it by 1,000, and you get this 0.0065. And then you multiply those two numbers together, And there would be the difference in the annual tax bill, $139 for the $300,000 home. If you are doing this on a in escrow, then that divide that by 12, you get $11 per month.
I'm glad you had that spreadsheet handy, Brett.
It was a blank spreadsheet.
I also wanted to put a link in the chat. In attendees. This is the 2021 MLO page on the D49 website. And there's a nice breakdown in there for a $300,000, $354,000, and $450,000 house. You can see what the monthly increase would be. There's a lot of FAQs on there. So if you have time, I would definitely check that page out. So this ballot measure is specifically to increase compensation for staff. So what kind of effect on the back end will staff end up seeing, and who does it affect?
Well, the intention, of course, is to assist our staff that are directly serving the students. And I think we saw last year during our difficult COVID year how valuable and how necessary the education establishment is in our families today. And so serving and bringing better competitive pay to those families that for those staff members is what's important to us. And so the ballot measure quotes a number of $8.6 million. That would be the total money that could be generated. In theory, it's a very high-end number, by the way, but the amount of money that could be generated towards compensation, and that would apply to approximately 1,700 people across the district. And so again, our quick math of that I will do here. Means that could make a difference of about, well, actually, let me correct one thing. We always have to remember, again, going back to that initial page, is the amount of charter school presence that we have, and our intention consistently to share charter school money, share this type of money with our charter schools throughout the district. So the $8.6 million, again, that's a very big number. If we were to, by the way, I'm not sharing this, so maybe I could and should share this, what I'm doing here on this blank spreadsheet again. So we're gonna use a high level number here of about 60%. 60% is how, as 60-40 would be the distribution between charter schools and the operator portfolio. So we multiply this, and you'd say, okay, we'll have about $5 million comes to the operator portfolio. We have a benefit rate that we have to consider of about 23%. So if we divide our number here, divided by 1.23, then we get about $4.2 million, and then say, okay, of the 1,800 staff that work in the operator portfolio, they'd be sharing that. So you'd find this number of about $2,300 per person as a complete high level average, right? And so the details of how that would work out would actually vary to some degree, just like our current pay schedule, our pay design, our pay system design. There are different roles that are valued with different levels of compensation. And so some would be higher than that, some would be lower than that, but that would be kind of the annual or the average distribution.
All right, Brett, we have some questions in the chat that would like to be addressed.
Okay.
So Mr. Long is asking why funding can't be moved from somewhere else within the district, and school spending, why should anyone give more money? And he has some specific information in there. So I don't know if we should, or well, you could probably take that one away, but kind of like the pools of money and the pots of money and how they're different and they don't just move maybe necessarily like that?
It's a great question. I really appreciate that question because that is a good common sense question, a good why question. And so what I'll do here is come back and show a little bit more detail on this screen here from this presentation. And this is taking those early pages and expanding it a little bit more. So I think I showed you this page here, which again started at the 275 number, worked our way towards the 97 number. This page adds another layer of detail to that to hopefully answer this question specifically. And again, what we have here, this is rotated a little bit, so the numbers aren't oriented the same way, but our total revenue here is in the left-hand column. There's the same $275 million that starts with the total district. The breakout between the chartered and the operated portfolio is how you walk up the column from there. So there's the 93 and the 181 that I referenced earlier. And then going vertically up this column again, what we start to see is the total pieces of revenue. And then the two columns to the right are the breakouts of that revenue between what has expectations to it, is basically already spoken for in terms of what it can be spent on, and then what is more general fund money, again, compensation decisions can be made for. And so we see big things that make a lot of sense. Internal service fund here that you see $11 million. This is a self-funded health insurance program. We are really strategic in how we operate our health benefit plan. And so we have an $11 million health benefit plan. That's again, because we have not only the number of employees, but all the family members, spouses and children that are part of that. And so that is a big cost of operations here. We have capital project funds in a couple different ways. We have our financing commitments. When we build new buildings, we do not pay cash for them, just like pretty much none of us pay cash for our homes. Some of us are fortunate to be able to do that, and I congratulate you for that. But most folks need to finance a large capital investment like that, as does a school district, as do many other businesses. So $15 million of that is for our financing commitments, our certificates of participation that are issued in order to generate the capital reserves or capital funds that are used to build the buildings. We then have a lot of what we call special revenue funds. And so these are things like grant programs that is money that is available to the district, but it is available for programs needs. And yes, we can pay staff with that, but we are not really setting compensation with that money. It is using the district's compensation schedule that again is identified by this upper right-hand number of general fund money, and just using it for these additional purposes. So there's grant programs, a number of federal and state grants that we operate, but those grants, those monies come to us with all of those rules and all of those strings applied to it. We also we have then another $23 million up above here of additional that is part of the general fund. It's mixed in with the general fund, but this is for us to do things like special education and career and technical education, gifted and talented education. Again, a lot of great programs that have great results and great reasons for their existence, but also have a lot of very tight rules with them. And so with all those rules for all of that stringed revenue, this $83 million, there is nothing that can be shifted from this group to the column to the right, because those are the rules that we are forced to deal with. If we accept this revenue, this is what it will be spent for. If we will not spend it for that, we will not receive the revenue. It's a very a clear requirement on our part. And so that I think is the best answer to the question of why we can't shift these monies around, because we are not allowed to. We have a lot of rules and regulations that we are forced to abide by, and we do so very honorably so that we can accomplish not only what those programs and what those revenue source donors are wanting us to do.
Okay, I'm going to go to another question in the chat. And Leslie, I had the same question. She said, am I understanding correctly that the increased money would go into the general fund? What guarantee is there that this will go to address the salary issue and not something else?
So that's a great question as well. Great question, and appreciate that being asked so I can provide this clarity. The ballot language is very specific that it will be spent on compensation. A lot of times you'll read ballot language questions and at the end there'll be and other purposes and other general fund uses. There'll be a phrase in there like that. And that is what someone could read and then have that question of, hey, does this mean it could go to other things besides what you're saying? And sometimes, sometimes those are the case, but that is not the case with this ballot language here. There is no and other uses type of language in there. It is only for compensation. And so if for some reason, at some point in the future, if this were to pass, and if at some point in the future, someone suspected that it was not being used for compensation, there would be legal grounds to challenge that and good information on that and make the district prove whether or not it is being followed.
And I know that Bruce said this wasn't listed on Ballotpedia yet, but I did get this in the mail and it is in here. So there are a bunch missing off of there. I know like D11s isn't on there either. Do you know when that gets updated, or is this the best one to go with?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know how Ballotpedia does their business.
Okay. Does the general fund go to hiring additional personnel?
It does. It does. And that, yes, it does. So school district leaders, principals quite often, and so maybe maybe Dustin will be able to speak to this later. They have that decision to make in terms of how many people they need to try and bring on staff to service the students that they have enrolled, and then is that question of this or that, is it a higher level of pay per person, or is it more people at a lower level of pay? And that is a very basic question that many leaders in business have to wrestle with all the time, every day, every year. So yes, the quantity of people is affected by the general fund, but to what I was saying earlier, when it comes to some of those string revenue categories, we have the opportunity to add staff there for those specific roles, again, like special education, like gifted and talented, career and technical education, et cetera. But nothing in those stringed revenue sources is able to change a different level of compensation for them. It's just at the staff or the district level, standard level of compensation.
Okay, I have a few more questions, then I'm going to go back to the chat. But I think an issue that gets brought up usually whenever we ask for increased compensation or we talk about it, is this an increase in pay for district administration for people like you, Brett?
No. Quick, flat answer is no. We understand the sensitivity of that, and our wish is to create a better situation for the staff, again, that are serving the students directly. We all are in service of students, and we're all working in public education. We're all in service of students. But we understand the sensitivity of folks, that folks would rather these monies go to those frontline workers, if you will, and we echo that, and we want to support that as well.
Okay, one question we had in the chat was about Proposition 119, Learning and Academic Progress Program. Will that assist in reducing any of the costs of District 49?
So I think 119. Let me check something real quick here on that, so I make sure I give the correct answer.
And I can go to Dustin if you want to look that up for a minute.
Yeah, well, so 119. What 119 is doing is focusing, I think, predominantly on preschool aged programs. I think it's called out of school programs. And so it's even a large part focused on, or if not focused on, enabling and helping support programs that go beyond the school district. So I think in short answer to that question, it may have some potential benefit to us, but likely nothing material for us. And if it did, it would only be for a number of positions, because again, that would be another piece of stringed revenue, because there would be expectations of that. So it wouldn't be able to change compensation rates with that.
So I want to go to Mr. Horace for just a minute. He has seen really the direct impact of us not being equal to some of the other districts? When people take a job here compared to taking a job in D20, what is that financial hardship that they might be taking on by coming to District 49? So Dustin, just what has the impact of us not maybe paying as much as D20 or 11? What impacts have you seen in your building? Wait, you're muted.
Sorry. Excuse me. Simply put, it just affects the number and quality sometimes of staff we can hire. When education's at a place now, it used to be where we had a lot of options, especially at the elementary level. It's getting more and more and more competitive every year on hiring. And when we are $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 less in a position, people, are going to typically go toward the higher paid. We've traditionally been able to overcome some of our lack of pay with our schedule, because our 2-week fall break we have coming up and our 2-week spring break is attractive to many employees. But even that, there's a point where those 2 weeks aren't worth $5,000 or $6,000. Everyone has their number on what that's worth. The other thing that we've been able to do in our district, I think we've had a pretty good culture at most of our schools, as far as how we treat employees and how the relationships are with employees and supervisors, particularly in the buildings is where I'm most familiar. And that as well keeps some people when they make a few $1,000s less. But again, there's a breaking point where it's too much. And that, so if we want the opportunity to have the best teachers for students and to have a shot at the best teachers, I should say, we need to be competitive with what other districts around us are offering. Sorry, Siri thought I was talking to her. So yeah.
Now I'm going to put a link in the chat. This is to the BOE meeting that Dustin spoke at. He gave very specifics on numbers of people who, there were people who accepted jobs here, but then also were offered a job in D11. And I mean, how can you not take it if it's a $7,000, $8,000 raise? So I encourage everyone to save that link and check it out later. Dustin's right at the beginning. It's some good information and good to hear it from a principal who supports staff and sees, firsthand they're short 2 teachers this year. How many people have to take overages this year? It's already a tough year to begin with. So thanks, Dustin, for your insight.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to some questions in the chat. Does compensation include bonuses? Are the pay scales the same across the entire zone?
Okay, good. Good question again. And I'm glad that question's being asked so we can provide some clarity to that. There's no such thing as bonuses in District 49, especially for performance, end of year type of things. What we have done periodically is when we are hiring folks for certain hard to fill roles, we have at times offered some additional compensation for that hiring portion of it, but is not a bonus per se that we would normally think of being a performance related result bonus. There's no such thing as those in District 49. In terms of the pay scales and pay schedules, yes, across the entire operated portfolio, I will say the charter schools, again, are allowed to make their own decisions. That's part of their autonomy that they're granted. But in terms of all of the schools and the operated portfolio across the district, all the zones, they are all operating under a single pay schedule. And that's appropriate because it's all one single legal entity. We don't want to have, it wouldn't be appropriate for us as a single legal entity to have different pay schedules in place for different schools or different zones.
Okay, we got another one. It says, essentially you want to tax homeowners who may or may not have children benefiting from the staff you say you need. It is not fully specific or clear on its use, e.g. special needs faculty, certified teachers, or what curriculum?
And so, yes, to the first point, yes, of course, public education has always been a responsible of the entire community, the entire populace, not just folks that are that have students in the educational system at that time. So you're right in making that point. It's true. And it's also believed to be a very good driver to the value of community, and I mean the financial value, the value of homes, and such. Good or a good contributor to that. I think in terms of that second point, I might be interested to know what Dustin's perspective, if he's still with us, is on that in terms of what sacrifices does someone at a school level have to make in order to when the funding is at this level? What positions are you not able to do, and what services are you not able to provide to the students that you have?
Yeah, certainly it can affect positions we fill. For instance, we at my school this year, we have had 2 unfilled positions, a social studies and a science position from the beginning of the year that we just weren't able to fill. And partly that's because we don't want to hire people that we don't think are going to be good enough for kids. But also truthfully, there's a lack of people interested, and we lost at my school alone over the summer, new people we had hired in the spring took positions and then backed out in the summer because a nearby district offered them, it was between, the lowest one was $7,000 and the highest one was $9,000 difference in money. So they backed out, and 2 of them backed out late in July, which was too late for us to hire anyway. And we just hired 1 this week. So that's good that now we have 1 filled. But to go to Brett's question about what that means for our staff is we have to have a teacher in those positions. So that means the staff we currently have to do more. So in our case, we have about, I believe it's 17 teachers that are doing overages right now. And overages mean they have an extra class beyond the normal load. And that extra class is typically during a plan time. So they have less time to plan, to grade, to collaborate, because they have an extra class. They get some compensation for that extra class, but truthfully, it's worth it for a very, very small percentage, because it just takes away time from their day that they can do other things. So in some cases, we don't fill a position and we go without. In most cases, we fill a position without filling the position, if that makes sense, by having current people do more. And it gets to a point where it's tough.
Okay, I got another one. So I think this kind of goes, and Carlton and Irene, if I'm not addressing this right, just put it more in the chat. But it says, please quantify or be more specific. What area do we have void staff is not specific enough in my mind. Do you guys, I'm assuming you mean we're saying we don't have enough staff right now. Are you asking where they are in the building? So maybe give me some more info in the chat, and then we will come back to your question. When is the last time, because I know all about 3B, I was here for the MLO, but when is the last time we asked to increase taxes?
Yes, I can answer that. The last time we actually asked to increase taxes was in 2014. Because in 2014, there were 2 questions on the ballot. One was a question on the then existing mill levy override, which we asked the community, can we keep it at the current level that it was at? So it was not a tax increase question, but there was also a separate question that was a full tax increase bond question to help us in capital facilities. The first one passed, the second one did not pass. You go back in further in time before that, there's probably been, I think, about 2 to 3 to 4 times where tax increase questions had been asked and had not been supported by the community. So the last time that we've actually passed a tax increase question dates all the way back to 2005.
Okay. I have my questions written down. So I live out in Falcon, and my property value has, like doubled in the last 4 years since I built, just based on what my neighbors are selling their houses for. So a lot of times I hear, okay, my property value went up. That means the school district's getting more money. where is that money going and why is that money not being used for this?
Yes, good question. And so our current tax structure that we have at the school district, that we have with our community, we can think of it really in three pieces. Number one is the amount of mill rate that goes to support the general fund program, the general school finance act that we have. And that's where the largest part of the tax bill goes. And so that gets equalized with state share. And so it helps, and it's definitely used locally. But what that means is the state share balances that out. And so we may receive less state share for that. And that's the reality of how a large state funded system or state balance system like that works. The second category, or the second category, would be our capital needs. And so our current override that we have, which is 18.5 mils, is really split into two different priorities. One being capital focused priorities, the second being the operational needs. And so that 18.5 mils is really split into these two pieces. 14 mils of that 18.5 goes to the capital needs. And again, so that's paying for the financial instruments that we issue in order to build new buildings. So we've got that where we just built two new elementary schools, Bennett Ranch Elementary and Inspiration View Elementary. We also expanded all of the high schools recently with those resources, and we're getting ready to build another middle school with that resource as well. So that's the second major piece. And then there's this third piece of operational support. So laying that out, again, when you say that the market value goes up, which of course then the assessed value goes up, and that does increase your tax bill and increases total tax collections. Two of those, the majority of those are spoken for in very specific ways that do not affect how we operate the district on a day-to-day basis. It's that third piece that we're focusing in on with this conversation, with this election question, to say this is the piece where we have the least amount of comparability with these neighboring districts that, again, we are trying to compete with. And so it's that competitive nature that we are trying to get into a better place so that we don't have the difficulties that Dustin spoke of in terms of staffing and retention and such.
Okay, we got a question in the chat. Did you say this bill is a 60-40 split with 40% going to charters?
So I said that in my example. It was I used very round numbers intentionally. But whatever it is a per pupil calculation. Okay, and so with these mill levy override funds, even the current piece that we have now, the current 4.5 mils that we have now, and then if this were to be added to it, it would be shared with charter schools on an equitable, very completely equal per pupil basis. So that ratio may be 60-40. It may grow because charter students may grow. So it may go more towards 50-50. Just depends on what the balance is of overall enrollment in any given year.
Okay, so I got this blue book in the mail, and Proposition 120 is in there for a property tax assessment rate reduction. So again, like I am concerned, my house is worth $1 bajillion more than it was when I built it. What impact does this have if it passes to do the rate reduction?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it is something that I have concerns with. The reality in Colorado is that we have very low property taxes, and that's a good thing, right? And but if you look at, you can Google search it right now, and you'll probably find something that says we're somewhere in the low 40s in terms of the United States property tax rates. I've heard things like 49th in terms of effective tax rate. I see 47th. It just depends on which resource you look at and whatever. And so that's good, especially on an individual basis. But on a macro basis, on a statewide basis, this really is a concern for us, because education has, for the history of this country, for the most part, last 150 years, been funded by local property taxes. And so that is what is the best tie between the community and the students that are in that community and the students being educated. And so a measure like this, which seeks to reduce the assessment rate at a time when we are already a really great property tax state to live in, is really kind of difficult. It provides a difficult scenario for us, because it would just compromise. It would compromise this whole effort. It would compromise the existing efforts that we have already as well. And so it's one of those things where it's tempting on an individual basis, but I really would encourage people to understand the big picture and what it means on the macro view as well before making that decision, because it is something that I have great concerns about.
Okay, we have somebody with their hand up. So I'm gonna let them unmute themselves and then they can ask their question. So Susan, it should allow you to unmute and then you can go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so when I was listening to some information that was being presented about that specific proposal, if it reads correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the only taxes that will be reduced for property owners are those that have specific types of businesses, not residential homes. Can you please clarify that? Because in that blue book, that is what it states. So it's not actually for property owners, it's for specific businesses that will get a reduction in rate. So it doesn't actually apply to us. Can you clarify that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question, Susan. I appreciate that. And this is a really confusing thing to understand, because there was some legislative action that happened in this last latest legislative session too, that really kind of mixed in with this ballot question.
Correct. Yeah.
And provided kind of an interesting result at the end. One of the things that it does do is it does also, so it reduces, I believe, assessment rates, I think, on multifamily, like apartment buildings.
Right.
Reduces assessment rates on commercial properties, and so those are concerns for us. Those are the concerns for us. So, and so it is the residents, and in large part, who are voting for this. And while at one point it seemed like maybe the residential assessment rate was going to go down until the legislative change happened as well. It is what's happening in these other areas, which are assessed at higher rates, and so the reduction on them still have a negative impact to the district, because
Right.
we receive property tax revenue from all sources, from all types of property.
Right. Okay. That's what I understood on it as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the question, Susan.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions? I think I've probably asked enough. I had a whole list. So you can. Go ahead.
I just want to say there's a lot of great questions here, and we have lots of need and opportunity for folks who are interested in these things to participate with us in the school district. We love to engage with our community on this. We have a mill levy oversight committee that has the opportunity to hear all of the proposals that would be that this money would be spent on, and to provide their analysis, their recommendations to the Board of Education. We have the District Accountability and Advisory Committee, which concerns all district operations, not only the business side, but the operations and the educational programs as well. And so there are a lot of great questions that people have put in here, and I would just love to see you all come and engage with us directly on a regular basis.
Will you have an oversight committee for this tax increase?
This would be under the purview of the current oversight committee. So the current oversight committee really manages that current $4.5 million piece that we've talked about a couple of times. And so, yes, they would have the same oversight over this, and they're the ones that would make sure that that we would be honoring the ballot language. Of course, the Board of Education, everyone would have that responsibility as well, but this would be a group that would be looked at and is currently looked at to say, hey, are you staying true to the word? And we love having that type of visibility and accountability to us. So the answer is yes, that committee would have full oversight over this money.
Can any community member join that committee?
Yes, and in fact, it's great to have community members. Not that we don't love our employees, but our employees who are involved in these obviously have different perspectives, internal perspectives, in terms of knowing school district operations and stuff like that. And so we want to have community members that are a little more, that are somewhat distant, so that we can engage with them and understand what is their perspective, what are they hearing, what are they thinking, and so we can make sure that we understand that and we can answer those questions really well. So would love to have general community involvement with that.
So I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's to a Google form. It's more for you guys to ask questions if you think of them later. Open that link now, have it open on a tab. We'll also post this probably, I'm thinking, on the MLO page, but I'd have to check with Dave on that. But in that form, if anyone that's on this call is interested in being a part of that oversight committee, instead of typing a question, please type, I would like to be involved with this. And I'd be more than happy to send you an invite when those meetings are, and then you can come and attend, more than likely in person. But then you can kind of see, where is this money going? What is this oversight? And then one more thing I would like to mention. I don't know if you've watched the board meetings lately, but there's kind of been a split between the two sides. But when Brett presented this to our board, there was a 5-0 vote for it to move forward. They are all very supportive of 4A. I think they all want to compensate the staff that are here. They want to, attract new staff and make sure that they, see this is the best place to learn, work, and lead, and then want to stay here. So just a note, and you can go back and watch that board meeting. It might be the one that I put in the link before that Dustin was at too. Okay, question. This event is highlighting all the pros of the issues. What would the district say are the cons besides the obvious tax increase?
That would be far and away, the other side of this is that this is a tax increase. And I know that is not an easy thing to consider or to absorb. So it's not something that we ask, or I shouldn't say we ask. It's not something that has been asked, I think, with any, without understanding the gravity of that question. In terms of other cons to it, I think they're hard to come by, and you really would have to be highly speculative to say, oh, if we increase compensation, would this have a detrimental effect on property values or things like that? I can't see anything in particular in that regard. I'm just not familiar with anything besides the actual tax increase itself. That would be a strong argument against this. So, but I'd totally be open to quantifying something if someone had an idea or an issue to say, hey, this could be a result. What could be the dollar and cents result of that, or what could be the human resources result of that? Something I would love to contribute and participate with someone.
Someone commented that a con could be loss of teachers if we don't pass this. I know the big one's the tax increase, and I wanted to talk about it right away. I don't know if any of you have read the ballot language. It's the first thing that it says. The taxes are going to go up. So, I mean, I agree. I think that is the big one.
Yeah, and we're honoring the Tabor language. I mean, Tabor is something that's near and dear to many hearts, especially in this area. And so I understand the values and the benefits of our Tabor amendment, and glad that we can present something honoring that spirit, and so that the voters can really ask a well-informed question.
Any other questions we can answer?
Been a fantastic number of people as well, just observing as a school district leader. Again, I just would come back to that and say we love the community participation, love the opportunity to meet and engage with folks that maybe we haven't had a chance to before. So I really appreciate everyone that has devoted some time to that this evening, and look forward to seeing you all.
Okay, I'm going to put the link for the form one more time. Most of the questions, I'm just going to the form will go to me, but I will ask Brett for those answers, but at least we can keep it all in one spot. Plus, if you guys go to the MLO page, there are frequently asked questions. So if all of you asked, the exact same thing, we want to put that information on the web page, because if somebody missed this, they can go there and get that same question answered. So I would encourage everyone to use the Google form, but know that Brett is probably answering a lot of the questions, but I will be filtering them because
That's a great point, Lauren. Can we just show that real quick about how to find the information on the website?
Yep. Do you want me to share?
Sure. If you have that, you can navigate folks to that.
I think. Oh, there's my Google form. Okay. So if you go to, I'm going to start from the beginning, d49.org/D49MLO. I couldn't find it right away, but if you look on the left-hand side, 2021 mill levy override information, if you click on that link, it brings you to this page, and underneath Brett's presentation, these are all of those different questions, some of them that I asked, some of them that I didn't. So I would definitely get on there and take a look. I'm trying to think, what was the one that I liked the most when I was on here looking around?
We're kind of zoomed in on your screen, so we're not seeing you navigate anything.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how to fix that. It's not my whole screen. Let me try again. Maybe this one. Is this any better on the webpage?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this is, if you go to d49.org/D49MLO, on the left-hand side, can you see 2021 mill levy override information?
Yes.
You click there and then scroll down. There are a ton of these collapsible information pieces, so you can click on whatever you want, any of the questions that people have already asked that we've added. So know that any of your questions we'll probably add to the bottom of this, because a lot of them are really good from tonight. Anything you wanted to point out specifically?
You're right there in the middle on the question of is D49 administration staffing too much? And so if you click into that, what you'll see is some information that, again, that has been prepared, that compares us to these same neighbors and friends that we have at District 11 and District 20, and allows us to demonstrate that we're saving $1.5 million to $1.8 million per year in administration. So in that terms of efficiency, this is a big part of our efficiency strategy, is to operate with much lower administration than what other school districts have. So really would love folks to spend time on that and see how that is explained there.
Any other questions for us before we go? Stop sharing. Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate it. We hope that you got some of your questions answered. We hope you know where to go if you have more questions. And I encourage everyone to fill out the Google form, and we hope that you will all be on our Oversight Committee, because we could definitely use a lot more community participation in some of them. So.
Yes, thank you to everybody. Appreciate your time. And thank you to you, Lauren.